Objective, squares and square roots. Definition number 1, perfect square, the square of a whole number. So here are a list of the first 15 perfect squares that you need to memorize. Now I'll show you how to come up with these numbers. So 1 squared is 1 times 1, which is 1. 2 times 2, 4. 3 times 3, 9. 4 times 4, 16. 5 times 5, 25. 6 times 6, 36, 7 times 7, 8 times 8, 9 times 9, 10 times 10, 11 times 11, 12 times 12, 13 times 13, 14 times 14, and 15 times 15. So you need to memorize this list and you need to know where they came from. Definition number 2, a number that when multiplied by itself equals the given number. So this is the definition of a square root. A square root is a number that when multiplied by itself equals the given number. The symbol for square root is this. It's also called a radical or a radical sign. So the square root of 9 is 3. The square root of 225 is 15. The square root of 36 is 6. So if we went backwards, 6 times 6, 36. 15 times 15, 225. 3 times 3, 9. A number that when multiplied by itself equals the given number. Vic number 1, every positive number has 2 square roots. One is positive and the other one is negative. So we have the square root of 16, which is 4, because 4 squared, or 4 times 4, is 16. Well, there's another square root of 16, and it's negative 4, because negative 4 squared, negative 4 times negative 4, a negative times a negative is a positive. So negative 4 squared means negative 4 times negative 4, which is positive 16. So negative 4 is also the square root of 16. Definition number 3, the principal square root. This is just the positive square root. So in our previous example, 4, not negative 4, but 4 is the principal square root. Perfect squares. 3 different ways to write your answers. If I have the square root of 16, the principal square root is just 4, the positive answer. Plus or minus. So the positive square root of 16 is 4, and the negative square root of 16 is negative 4. So both square roots. This negative on the outside of the square root means the opposite of. So the opposite of the square root of 16, well, the square root of 16 is 4, so the opposite would mean change the sign. The opposite of the square root of 16 is negative 4. Example number 1, plus or minus square root of 36. Well, the square root of 36 is 6, so plus or minus carries through. The positive or negative 6. Now you could write 6 and negative 6. This means the same thing as plus or minus 6. There are 2 answers. Example number 2, the square root of this whole fraction, 25 over 4. 25 and 4 are both underneath the square root. So we can separate this into the square root of 25 divided by the square root of 4. Well, the square root of 25 is 5, and the square root of 4 is 2. So our answer is 5 over 2, and if you wanted to change it to a decimal, in this case it comes out pretty simple, 2.5. Example number 3, the opposite of the square root of 9. Well, the square root of 9 is 3, so the opposite of 3 is negative 3. Example number 4, the square root of 1 and 69 hundredths. So we have the square root of a decimal, and that's fine. We can take the square root of this, and we get 1.3. So you can do this in your graphing calculator. Press the second key, and then press the x squared button to get the square root symbol. So you press second, x squared, 1.69, and hit equals or enter, and you'll get your answer as 1.3. Vic number 2, not all square roots are perfect squares. Some are called irrational numbers. An irrational number is a non-repeating and non-terminating decimal. So there's no pattern to the decimal and it continues on forever. A common example would be pi. Here, the square root of 5 is also called an irrational number because if you type in the square root of 5 into your calculator, you get this long decimal that doesn't stop. It keeps going. Even though your calculator can only hold a certain number of digits, this number is going to keep going, and there's no pattern, so it's non-repeating and non-terminating. It doesn't stop. In these cases, you need to identify which consecutive integers the square root falls between. So I can type in the square root of 5 and I see it's 2 point something. So I know that the two consecutive integers are 2 and 3 because 2.2 something is between 2 and 3. Now you can do this without a calculator. Example number 5. The square root of 14.52 falls between which two consecutive integers? So, the square root of 14.52, you have to know those perfect squares that I showed you at the beginning. Well, the two that are between, or that 14.52 falls between, are 9 and 16. Those are the ones that surround 14.52. Well, the square root of 9 is 3, and the square root of 16 is 4. So this means the square root of 14.52 has to be between 3 and 4. These three dots in a triangle mean therefore. So therefore, the square root of 14 and 52 hundredths is between 3 and 4. Using a graphing calculator to estimate. So this is probably the easiest thing to do because you just type second x squared and then the number you want to find the square root of. So square root of 14, if you type it into your calculator, you get this long decimal. Now it's irrational, there's no repeating, and this decimal does not stop. It continues on, it's non-terminating. But we can estimate it, and I've rounded to 2 decimal places, so we're the hundredths place. Look at the third number after the decimal, it's a 1. We don't round up. We only round up if it's 5 or bigger, so 3.74. Square root of 7, 2.645. The 5 is 5 or bigger, so this 4 bumps up and becomes 5. Square root of 157, you get 12.59 or 5299. Look at the third digit after the decimal. 9 is 5 or bigger, so this 2 bumps up to a 3. A little bit more practice. Which two integers does the square root of 22 fall between? So you're looking at your list of perfect squares, and 22 isn't on the list, but 16 is, and 16 is right below 22. And then after 22, or the next number in the list after 16, is 25. 16 and 25 are on each side of 22. 22 falls between them. So the square root of 16 and the square root of 25 have to surround the square root of 16. The square root of 16 is less than the square root of 22, and the square root of 22 is less than the square root of 25. Well, the square root of 16 is 4, and the square root of 25 is 5. So the square root of 22 has to be between 4 and 5. Therefore,